Public Works Director, Brad Fink. Thank you for coming. And if you guys just want to, this is intended to be informal. We're not really looking to make any, but again, to just try to answer your questions and address your comments. We have everybody here that can help you with that. And maybe we can just go through the room and indicate your name and so forth, who you all are. I'll start with
Carolyn Emmers. I'm the owner of Wauconda Animal Hospital.
My name is Tim Howe. I'm just a guy.
Sounds like I think I've seen you around there. Yeah, I don't think we've ever met them. So. And I know Glenn.
Glenn Starkey. I've got a business in the industrial park and also just on the board of the Chamber of Commerce.
Linda Starkey. I'm here as a resident.
I'm Doug Buster. I'm a resident here for 25 years and a past board member.
Let's jump to this.
Cheryl Falk-Noviak, just a resident.
Just a resident? Cheryl, we jump to the front of this.
Just a resident.
Keith Chambers. We have property in the TIF area.
Okay.
Which Chambers? Property in the area?
Stephen Nielsen. I live in the town next door, but I leave all my money here.
Thank you, great.
Yeah. I do what I can.
I thought tonight we did receive a number of questions through our internet. Linda Kreniak, who coordinates and monitors our Facebook page and so forth. She pulled some questions that were received through the internet, and also she extracted some of the questions from the website or the Facebook pages, and I put them in a written format or a copy them, and we attempted to comment on them. I thought I'd start the meeting out tonight with just going over those questions that were received. So I'm going to hand out so everybody has a copy. You can read along. I'm going to read this. It's going to be a little dry, but I'm going to just read the comments, and then we can go through all of them. I think there's like 9 questions, or we could take questions and expand on each one as we go through it. However, it's an informal. There's 10 questions. So there's an informal meeting, and not to be intended to be all structured here. I'll just start with Ms. Carolyn. And you guys all have some copies of it too. I got a few more copies if everybody get them. The second one from Carolyn is we received a copy of your support request, and I wanted to share that with everybody too, so just pass that on.
That was added later.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Will, good to see you.
See you.
Thanks for coming out. We are just handing out some handouts here.
Okay.
These are some of the questions that we received via the web, internet, and off the Facebook document. So the first question is, why was the Dominic's location added to the district? Based on interest in this location in the past, wouldn't it seem like that the area would redevelop itself based on its location? Is it really blighted? If it's getting redeveloped quickly under TIF and taxes frozen, wouldn't it be losing out on a fair amount of tax dollars? First of all, blighted is a term defined in the state act that we're working under, and it's based upon a number of criteria being met. The area west of Route 12 that includes the former Dominic's building is not likely to develop without some form of assistance being provided by the community. The area west of Route 12 was added to be able to address blighted issues associated with that area, namely transportation, access issues, utilities, drainage, extensive duration of vacancies, such as the Dominic's property, and other listed blighted conditions in the eligibility study. Since the conditions were similar to those conditions east of Route 12, the blighted conditions for each were in part tied to the arrangement of Highway 12. It made logical and rational sense to expand the study boundaries based on trying to provide an overall master plan for the area, as well as cost effectiveness to include it in the TIF at this time, rather than to create a separate TIF or other program to address the conditions in this area. Further, the area west of Route 12 that became the former Dominic's property is not likely to develop without some form of assistance being provided by the community. The Dominic's property in particular has poor visibility and limited access and is located in the opposite direction of daily commuter traffic flow. In general, the viable development sites do not sit vacant for nearly 7 years. Under the TIF, taxes are not frozen. Property owners continue to pay taxes in the same manner that they are paid before the TIF. Only property tax increases that result from new development occurring are placed into a TIF fund, which funds may be used to pay for public improvements that would be initially funded by private investment or the developer. The quicker the area develops, the better it will allow the redevelopment project costs to be paid off in a timely manner and possibly end the TIF sooner. Anybody have any further questions on that, or I can move along? I'll go right to the next. Second question we received is, are we 100% certain that eminent domain will not be used? Explains that a village employee stated that it hasn't been used in the history of Wauconda, while neither has a TIF district. I keep going back to Bart. Bart's getting, that's our mayor, to know that the mayor's morning coffee when he first took office, he stated regarding the Dominic's location, then in generally later, that we will always negotiate first, but that first is at last option. It's not the first option, but it's an option. The response is that eminent domain is currently available for village use if we need it, but can only be used for explicit public uses, projects such as utilities, roads, community facilities, parks, etc. And then we go on to say that without discussing at length the governance, legal, and social reasons for eminent domain, eminent domain does not just mean acquiring land outright. It also includes temporary takings and easement acquisition. And for an example, if an easement is needed for a specific area to address stormwater drainage concerns for the greater TIF area due to topography and other factors, the landowner refuses to sell such an easement. The inability to use eminent domain would negatively impact all the surrounding properties, their value and viability of the TIF as a whole. Similarly, the village may need to act quickly to complete a utility road project in a timely manner that would require temporary taking, which is an act of eminent domain that would need to be compensated via TIF funds. Presently, the village mayor and board of trustees are emphasized the use of the eminent domain only in extremely limited circumstances. Any questions or comments?
Just add on to that one, we have the village attorney here. Unlike other states, and I'll have Rudy correct me if this is wrong, under Illinois, due to case law in 2002, most states you're allowed to have eminent domain for just a public purpose, which economic development can be. But under Illinois law, due to the Illinois Constitution, it has to be a public purpose for a public use. So it can't just be taking land from one person and giving it to another person. It's not allowed in Illinois under the current Illinois Constitution. The national level, it may be for the Fed, but under the Illinois law, you can't. So in the TIF district, the municipality can't exercise taking somebody else's property to give it to a developer. It can be used to do, as listed, get easements for drainage, buy area for roadway, temporary takings. So if a road construction project needs to be finished in one summer, the municipality or any governmental agency can temporarily take land to store construction supplies on, but they have to compensate for it. And they couldn't do that without eminent domain. So there are some reasons for it. It's not just taking people's land. There are other things that eminent domain covers, but in Illinois, you can't just take it and give it to somebody else.
It can't be taken and given to a developer in Illinois. Supreme Court is very clear on that. That is not a legitimate public purpose, even though it's for economic development in a blighted area. It can't be done.
Thank you, appreciate it. Third question is it appropriate to have such a large TIF district? Doesn't that open us up for more issues and errors? TIF districts must be at least 1.5 acres in size, with no explicit restrictions on the size and the number of TIF districts in a municipality. For example, in Lake County alone, the TIF districts range from 8 acres to over 830 acres. And then we'll go on to say, go up to talk about TIFs in the first question. But our TIF district is 225 acres. Of that 225 acres, I think 55 acres is in right-of-way. So it's about 170 acres of private lands that we're dealing with. And actually some of the private land is owned by government agencies, IDOT and the village. Number 4 question is, on the TIF team, and what is the proposed process for developments in the TIF? Presently, the TIF approval process is being directly supervised by the Building and Zoning Department, with oversight from the Village Administrative Department, with ultimate review and approval by the Village Board. The TIF approval process and the continuation of the TIF is reviewed and audited initially and on an ongoing yearly basis by the Joint Review Board. The Joint Review Board, again, is the taxing bodies, all the taxing bodies, which is made up of representatives from the various taxing bodies and one public member. Any developments proposed under the TIF district will be processed under the village's existing building and zoning permit process. So there's no changes in the process because we have a TIF in place. What is the zoning board's role in the TIF? The Plan Commission Zoning Board of Appeals retains all of the same oversight and review functions as stated under the village code, which is planning and zoning. They're not involved in the financial matters associated with the TIF. That's a village board function. What is being done to assure that eminent domain will not be used? We just refer you back to the comments up above where we talked about eminent domain. Currently on the plans and wish list for development is an eminent domain necessary. Again, we refer you back to examples that may happen where there could be a need for eminent domain. With the TIF, do you have the ability to deny developments? Any developments proposed under the TIF district will be processed under the village's existing building and zoning permit process. Developments that do not comply with the standards of the village and process may not be approved. So, which is the fact that it is the way it is today. So again, the TIF doesn't change the process that we'll be going through. What will be done to balance downtown Main Street and other thriving business areas with the new developments? We have seen towns around us lose their Main Street and charm, all for the sake of big boxes, and it's affected the towns negatively. The village's comprehensive plan currently addresses the need for balanced commercial approach for the village as a whole with the area of the TIF district and downtown plan to create synergy between each other. Further development of the TIF area will be addressed in more detail with the further planning process and steps.
So you're not prepared to tell us how the synergy is going to be accomplished?
I don't know, you got any thoughts on that one, Jeremiah?
The idea is that the downtown will have its own distinct identity, whereas this area, this is under the current comprehensive plan, whereas this will be able to accommodate more commercial uses for automobile-oriented traffic. But with their proximity, it's the idea that the downtown presently would be your hub of community life, your nightlife center, your area for community facilities like the village hall, and things of that nature, whereas this would be more your regional shopping area, since it's access to Route 12 and 176. Ultimately, it could have a similar development if the area of downtown needs to expand, and growth in this area since they do pretty much overlap with each other. One of the key elements of the redevelopment plan is an initial step to develop a master plan for the TIF. So what exactly will the TIF be beyond what the comprehensive plan says? That is yet to be determined through the public planning process that would do the master plan. And that hasn't been developed yet because the TIF hasn't been approved to instigate that process of starting the plan. Beyond what we've seen in the comprehensive plan, we have drafts of the comprehensive plan overlay over there if you want us to flip them up. Beyond general concepts of where the roadways might go and the extensions of that nature are. But the orientation really is to capture those dollars that are passing through your town via Route 12 and 176.
Anything further? The last question on this handout is did Dominic's location have to be included in the TIF? I would imagine with their mass exodus and an expiring lease that this might move on its own, allowing for tax dollars to be shared with the taxpayers. Can it be removed for now and added if it continues to remain empty after the lease expires? It may look peculiar if the area gets developed immediately under the TIF when it was just added. Again, we commented on the Dominic's property, and I believe it's question number 1 above, and its inclusion in the TIF study. And then Dominic's parcels are not an isolated area. Overall blighted conditions both on and off the site need to be addressed in order for the area to be redeveloped in a holistic manner. While it may be possible to exclude the area, exclusion of it would greatly affect the ability to address overall development conditions and lack of access issues such as entry drives and the light on 176. I think I'd like to add that Dominic is paying close to $300,000 in property tax today, or the owner of that property. So it's, the taxing bodies are receiving a fair chunk of change for their property taxes to benefit. What we're not getting is the sales tax revenue. So it'd be nice to have.
They're paying $300,000?
$297,000 was paid in 2000, or in their tax bill.
Well, it sits empty.
That's correct.
And you think somebody else might come in and say, yeah, this looks like a good spot to...
That's what makes it difficult to get it redeveloped.
That's the reason the TIF is being formed, that it's set 7 years with somebody.
Somebody's gonna look at a $397,000 tax bill at an empty building and say, yeah, that looks like where I want it.
That's the reason it needs assistance, is that the burden has been so great on it that there's no one drawn there, and it's just a big blight for the community for 7 years.
I think I know why it's empty.
Well, it's empty because the lease, Dominic saw no reason to escape the lease, and the property owner has no interest in changing the status quo because Dominic's rent payment is paying the property taxes.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's been no incentive to do anything with it for anybody. It's not so much the real estate tax, the property tax burden itself on that property, which isn't particularly excessive for what it is. It's the fact that it's being paid, and it's being paid by Dominic's, not by the landlord, not by the property owner. It is, but indirectly, it's being paid by Dominic's as part of the terms of the lease.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy out there because Dominic's, by paying the market level rental payments that were negotiated however many years ago that lease was negotiated, the assessor has 2 methods: fair market value, and everybody's fair market value has somewhat plummeted over the last 4 or 5 years, or capitalization of rents methodology. And that's what they're doing because they're paying a market value rent from pre-recession times, and so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy which keeps the taxes high. If there was no rent and it was vacant, my guess, although I'm not an appraiser, my guess would be those property taxes would be a lot less. But for whatever reason, Dominic's wants to keep paying the rent.
I suspect they'll stop after December 28th.
I would think so.
Next item of discussion, I was going to touch on Wauconda Animal Hospital needs support flyer that was circulated or is being circulated. Just read that as November 20th, which is next week, a week from tonight. There's a village board, special board meeting, and we'll be discussing the TIF and the public hearing schedule for that. Will present their plans to the public for the 225-acre TIF tax increment financing district, which is an area designated for business redevelopment. They plan on extending Thomas Court through to Barrington Road. The TIF district will most likely be established. The village has already invested time and money in this project before it was ever presented to the public. The issue is transparency and fairness. Transparency because they're asking to be accepted by the public and approved by the village board without presenting specifics, such as how many and which residential properties will be condemned. Fairness because this small business and people who own homes on the street do not have the deep pockets of the developers. Wauconda Animal Hospital is a business that has a right to remain where we are. And please support by coming to our public meeting on November 20th at 7 p.m. The planners and developers are counting on the public not being interested enough to attend this meeting. Also, please join the group of Wauconda for Wauconda on Facebook. This is a dedicated group of people who have attended the village meetings and make it their job to be informed in an effort to build people and transparency. They are gaining a wide following of concerned citizens and public business owners. Thank you for your support. We received a copy of this yesterday, and just like to respond to those comments. First is that no plans have been formally submitted or approved that show the animal hospital to be removed.
Or whatever. That is somewhat what I mean by transparency, that you will not, I would never expect you guys to spend the money to have perfect engineered plans for Thomas Court, totally finished before you present this to the public. That wouldn't be reasonable. But I think that you should have, and I think you do have an idea of how wide you want Thomas Court to be, some idea. Let's say within a 15-foot ballpark. I think you have some idea of how you want Thomas Court to be. And when I'm talking about transparency, I'm talking about these kinds of answers. No one will commit, even in the vaguest sense, at all. You leave very open-ended answers, such as, no plans have been formally submitted or approved. That's not an answer. It's really not, to me. It is not an answer, and I don't believe it would be to anybody. And it's very similar to, for the meeting of the taxing bodies or districts. And one of the, I'm not sure who she represented, I think she might have been Park District, I'm not sure. There's a woman up front, I didn't know her name, sorry. All I remember is her saying, you handed out something at the very end of the meeting, towards the end, saying, sort of describing what was going on with the TIF district. And the people up front read it through as quickly as possible, or just looked at it. And the woman said, well, I'm trying to remember her name. She said, she questioned the wording, of our intention is not to, So she said, I thought that there was some mention of possibly displacing people. And your response was, well, our intention is not to. But that's very open-ended. It's not saying anything to anybody. That's all well and good, in my opinion, when you say, that's political speak, when you say my intention is not to, or there are no plans at this time, it doesn't quell, or it doesn't quiet anybody's fears, or at least mine, because it's so open-ended. Your intention is not to, of course. in 4 months, or well, 4 months, 2 years, whatever it be, then you turn around and say, well, yes, but our intention, yes, we did say that, our intention wasn't to, but we had to. So, to me, this is not being transparent at all, because I cannot believe that when you are talking about Thomas Court being the center point, not the center point. I talked to Mayor Bart today, and he said, Thomas Court isn't the center point. And I was like, okay, it's a major part, because you guys keep talking about Thomas Court being extended through to 59. You know, if you are extending Thomas Court through to 59, I cannot believe that in some meetings, or talking amongst yourselves, that you guys have not talked about, well, what would we have to, what would our vision be to, you know, what would we be doing with Thomas Court, possibly? Would we maybe have to make it wider than 40 feet or whatever it is now? Would we have to make it wider? Would we have to put sidewalks in? Let's get an idea so that people on the street could have an idea instead of us going all the way through this process and then at the end saying, no, we don't know, no, our plans are not this, our plans are not this. And then after that, then you guys are totally wide open to come in. Obviously, there will be more meetings, but to say, well, we never said that we were going to. You know, we never said that we weren't going to. We didn't state anything. We didn't, you know what I mean? You're not, that's what I'm talking about, transparency. I cannot believe that with this much money already, I don't know how much money, but I'm assuming it's a decent amount already put into this, and this being a major part of it, that you do not have any idea how wide this road may be.
This is a tiered planning process. So this is the first step was this comprehensive plan, which is the first long-term idea of what the road concept will be, which would include the extension of Thomas Court. This is as far as it's gotten on paper, drawing, or anything of that nature. From this document, the village needed to come up with a way of paying and funding any planning and future development for this area and assisting with any of these infrastructure improvements. So the general concept's here. The next step was the TIF district. Let's form a TIF district and find a way to fund the ability to look at this further and also determine what the final concept will be and what the demand will be for Thomas Court. What will the pavement need to be? Will there be sidewalks? What's the surrounding area development going to be on the vacant parcels that may need to support it? How can we address parking areas such as your parcel in the area with on-street parking or maybe another dedicated off-street public parking lot? After the TIF district's approved, that'll be the next step, is coming up with a plan, a master plan for this area. We had the village engineer tonight. I don't know if you've looked at any plans for Thomas Court beyond what it is now. I do not believe you have, or any future cross-sections.
No, there's been, as Jeremiah stated, it's just been the comprehensive plan to date. I mean, there were some rough, budgetary numbers put together, cost estimates based on cost per mile of road construction, but it was very high level estimates. That's really all that's been done.
And that plan as we go forward will be another public process. I know it's uneasy because it is the future. We don't have anything for certain that we can hold up and say this is what the road's going to look like, because getting that map costs more money and more public process. And the TIF district needs to be formed in the village's mind to be able to pay for that process, to bring everybody back in and really address this area. To go into greater detail to get a plan without any way of funding for the improvements is somewhat futile in the village's mind, or it has been in the past. So this is really setting the stage based on what the comprehensive plan laid out. This is the next step.
So no one will venture, I mean, I had a private meeting, and Mr. Miller was nice enough to meet with me, and he said that he envisioned, at one point in the meeting, he said he envisioned a 3-lane road for Thomas Court. Okay, but nobody